Today I want to share with you a little sneak peek of one of the videos from the Next Generation Clarinet Method 30-Day Challenge that is starting Monday if you're watching this video live. There will be a link in the description with more information about it. If you're watching this after July 7th, 2019, which is tomorrow if you're watching it live, then the registration for that will probably be closed, but it may be opening up again in the future, so check the description for information about that. But I want to share this little video that talks a little bit about fingerings. So this clip from the challenge videos is talking about mainly how to read a fingering chart and talking about how to read music and how to read notes. Again, that challenge is very inclusive, starting from the beginning, but getting all the way into more advanced stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to play that little clip that talks about what a good fingering chart looks like and how to read the fingering chart so you know how to play the notes. The one thing that might be as important as knowing how to start a note and play it with a good sound on the clarinet is actually being able to read the notes. So if you don't know how to read music yet, that's totally okay. You got the How to Play Music course as part of this challenge, and I encourage you to go through that. I'll be referencing some modules out of it to watch throughout the challenge, but assuming you do know how to read music, then you'll be in good shape. But if you don't, I encourage you to check out the first part of the notes module for the reading music course, because that's going to go over just the very basics of like how to look at the notes on a staff and how to read them. I also want to very briefly talk about how to read a fingering chart because I think that's really valuable information. So most good fingering charts will have the name of the note, what that note looks like on the staff, and then a diagram of the fingering for it. I like the charts that have a diagram that show like the pictures of the keys. I think those are the best and the easiest to follow. Some of them have like numbers next to it and the numbers are like related to the keys, but I think those get really confusing to look at. So I think the diagrams that show the pictures are the best. So you'll have something that looks like this with the diagram and the note name and the note on the staff. And basically what that means is to play that note name or what that note looks like on the staff, you use this fingering on the diagram. So if we have like a C sharp here, it shows the hole on the back of the clarinet, which is the thumb hole, which we'll cover. And then we cover the first three because those holes are filled in. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And then for this C sharp, you'll see there's also the little pinky key. And if you look at the clarinet, we have this key right there. So we play that with our pinky. So that's the fingering for C sharp. You can see how it's related to the diagram, and then you also can see the position on the staff. We also know it's a C sharp because if we look at the bottom line of the staff, we know that's E because it's the bottom line of the staff. And then we go down one space below that. Since we're going down, we go backwards through the alphabet to D, and then it's one ledger line below that. So we go backwards one more step in the alphabet to C, and then we have the sharp accidental next to it. If any of that was confusing about why this is a C sharp or what I was talking about with the bottom line of the staff being E or going backwards through the alphabet as you go down by steps, then check out the How to Read Music course and watch those first few videos from the notes module to start understanding how to read notes, because that's important. I hope you enjoyed that little clip from the Next Generation Clarinet Method 30-Day Challenge. I also now want to talk a little bit more about fingerings and how to choose the best fingerings. So I hope you now know how to read a fingering chart, but you'll notice that some notes have multiple fingerings because there's multiple different ways to play the same note on the instrument by using different fingerings. So how do we know which fingering to choose if there's more than one option? It really all comes down to the situation, and I like to call it the golden rule of fingerings, which says, if possible, keep all the finger motion to just one hand. This is a really good example, and one of my favorite examples of this that is a fingering that's not used very much is the left hand E flat, B flat key. oftentimes everybody learns that E flat or B flat should be done with the right side key, and that's sort of the most standard fingering. Some people learn the one-on-one fingering, which I think is very situational and helpful and good to know, but only for specific passages, whereas the right one is very common, and the left one should be more common than it is, I think. The reason why the left hand E flat, B flat fingering is so beneficial is because if you're moving around these left hand notes here, then you can keep your motion all in just the left hand, and you don't have to worry about coordinating the right side key getting in there. That's the reason why it's best and why the golden rule of fingering choices is to keep everything in one hand, is because if you can do that, then you don't have to worry about coordinating two hands. There's a potential when you're going from like G to E flat, if you're using the right key, you might get your D and your left hand fingers down just before the E flat lever comes down, and you might get like a brief moment of a D before this goes down. Whereas if you're doing this, that's still a possibility, but it's much less likely because your fingers are all moving together on one hand and you don't have to worry about coordinating two hands, because it's harder to get the two hands to coordinate versus just fingers from one hand. So that's the golden rule of fingerings. When you're looking at a specific note that has multiple fingering options and trying to figure out what is the best option, you have to look at both the note you're coming from and the note you're going to. So again, going back to this E flat, it might look really logical if we're going E flat to use the left finger, and I think that's always a good option, unless the next note is C or anything lower where you're going to have to be covering this hole, because then that would force you to go E flat, and then you can't really get to C. You have to do some sort of a weird slide thing, which doesn't work out well. Sliding should be avoided at all costs. I'll maybe talk in a future video about some times where sliding might be okay, but in this case we don't want to take this option because we'd have to slide to the C. So instead we would use the E right hand E flat to C, so this finger is free. Of course, this breaks the golden rule of fingerings because we'll have to be coordinating getting the right hand in and the left hand, both going to it and leaving it. But because the other option isn't better, then that's why we use that fingering. Some other instances where this golden rule of fingering can be really applicable and helpful is a lot of times in the pinky key areas. It's pretty standard to sort of have your left pinky be on the EB key and then your right pinky on the FC key. That's sort of the default position for the pinkies. But sometimes if you're playing in other keys partially, you might change that default and maybe have the right hand on the C sharp, or the left C sharp, right B, so that you can get to the D sharp if you're playing in the key of E major or something with more sharps than that. But it's also really helpful to get the right B involved more. I think a lot of times people forget about that fingering and are always used to doing it with the left fingering. But this right finger can be really helpful if you're doing something like D to B, or really any note going down to B or going up from B. I also find this really helpful if you're crossing the break and then going to be skipping. So like say you're playing a G major arpeggio, you're going G, B, D, G, and then back down. It can be really helpful to use this right B because again, you don't have to worry about coordinating the left pinky coming up and then coming back down after the right hand has come down. You can just go keep everything in the right hand, G, right hand moving, then both hands moving to go down to the low G. But the more that you can keep just one hand moving as you go from note to note, the better off you'll be and the easier it'll be to speed up those patterns and just get the coordination really precise so that the notes are coming out cleanly and quickly. So that's it for the golden rule of fingering. I hope you enjoyed seeing that little sneak peek about what's in the next generation clarinet method 30-day challenge. There's a lot more in the challenge, of course. That's just one small snippet from one of the 30 days. We go over tons of stuff, but every day there's these kind of training things. And I hope you found it helpful to learn about the golden rule of fingerings, and I hope that helps you to maybe change some fingerings that you're used to doing that will make it a little bit more efficient for you to play by keeping everything moving in one hand. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.